You're here at the Food Hub to Food Hub transactions gathering about expanding and strengthening your value supply chain. And mentioned that we're going to be recording this session, and that excludes the networking activity. This gathering was organized in partnership with the Southwest Regional Food Business Center, partnership with UC SARUP, UC Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education Program, and the California Department of Food and Agriculture, Office of Farm to Fork. We're supported by the Southwest Regional Food Business Center. And so that has been set up to support a more resilient, diverse, and competitive food system by providing localized assistance to support small to mid-sized producers, processors, and distributors. And Christina, would you mind going to the next slide? So you can learn more, and I think Christina is going to, she dropped it in the chat if you want some more information about the Business Center. And so I'm going to ask everyone, please put your name and your Food Hub name or organization in the chat so we can all get acquainted with each other. And then I'm also going to suggest that everyone changes their profile name where their picture is showing up on the Zoom screen. And so rename yourself so it says your name and then your organization, like how mine is formatted, Alicia Badorf, UC SARUP. So you can do that by hovering your mouse over your picture on Zoom, click the 3 dots, and then click rename, and you should be able to rename yourself. And then some more housekeeping. Please mute yourself so we don't catch any background noise. If you're calling from your phone into the meeting, you can mute and unmute yourself by pressing *6. We will be sharing this PowerPoint presentation and links after the meeting in a follow-up email, along with a list of attendees with their email addresses, so you can connect with anyone you meet today. And if you don't want your information shared, please send an email to me. Christina is sharing my email address in the chat for that. So quickly, I'm going to run through a little bit about the California Food Hub Network. And oh, yeah, she's on it. Okay, cool. So California Food Hub Network is a learning network to coordinate technical assistance, collaborative learning, and information sharing for and among food hubs in California. And next slide. So there is a listserv, which I think a lot of you are already on, but if you haven't joined it, there's a QR code and there's a link in the chat to share the listserv. And so this is intended for cross-communication and discussion between food hubs. We also make announcements about these types of network events and also funding opportunities. So if you're on the listserv, please take advantage of it. You're connected to about 100 people across California that maybe work for food hubs or food hub operators, or in some cases are offering support or technical assistance to food hubs. Next slide. And we also have a Find a Food Hub map, which I've seen like a lot more people are looking at. So if you haven't added your food hub yet, I urge you to do so. We already have a growing list on the map, so that's exciting to see. And I am going to pass it over to Christina from CDFA for the agenda.
Hey everyone. So if we haven't met, I'm Christina at California Department of Food and Agriculture in the Office of Farm to Fork, leading up the Farm to Community Food Hubs program. So just really quickly what to expect today. So today is all about food hub to food hub transactions. So what we mean by that is essentially food hubs selling and purchasing from each other, either to expand the availability or diversity of the products that they offer, or to even coordinate and collaborate and share resources like cross-docking, transportation, or cold storage, and so much more. So we're going to jump into an awesome panel. facilitated by Alicia and followed up by Q&A by all of you. And then once that closes, we're going to enter into the networking session for those that want to stay on for that. So like Alicia mentioned, the panel will be recorded. The networking session will not, so it'll be a little more private. And then once that concludes, we are going to just ask you to spend a few minutes to complete Alicia's evaluation. And that really is important for reporting back to our funders, but also for us to know what these gatherings are like for you, how we can improve, and we really, really do value that. So thanks for giving us your time for that too. So with no more time wasted, passing it off to Alicia and the panel.
Okay, thanks, Christina. So Christina is going to spotlight our panelists. We're really excited that they're here and really grateful for that. So I will quickly introduce them. So we have Jay Peacock, who is the general manager at Cape Valley Farm Shop. We have Katia Beckman, who's the programs and warehouse manager at Tahoe Food Hub. Kang Vang, who's the owner and founder of Fresno BIPOC Produce, and Charlie Michel, the program manager at Northwest Food Hub Network. And so thank you all for being on the panel today. So we're trying to incorporate, some of you had some great questions that you asked on registration, so we're trying to work those in where we can. Again, this panel is going to be focused on food hub to food hub transactions. So that's like buying and selling between food hubs specifically. And in some case, there's sharing of storage or cross-docking, shared transportation and things like that. So without further ado, I'm going to dive in. And I guess for the Q&A portion of this, we're going to put aside about 10 minutes for Q&A after the panel. Please use the Q&A function in Zoom and put your questions in there as they come up. And we will get to as many of those as we can when the panel is over. And then also, when the panel's done, if you want to raise your hand on Zoom, you can also do it that way. So yeah, I'm going to start by asking, I guess I'll start with Kang, because you're to the right of me on the Zoom screen. If you could describe Fresno BIPOC Produce and what your transacting relationship is to other food hubs. And then why did you decide to start selling and or buying from other food hubs?
Hello, everyone. My name is Kang Bang. I'm from Fresno, California. I started the Food Hub in 2021 as a mission to help, the underserved BIPOC farmers, especially in my region, the Central Valley, to move their produce to institutions. And I work with over 200 farmers. Majority of them in the Central Valley, and but I've expanded my network of farmers a little bit down south of Fresno, going to Dinuba, Tulare, and then going to up north, Madera, Merced, Sacramento, a little bit above Sacramento area, and then recently, I think starting this year, I started working with organic farmers in the Central Coast, just trying to help everyone who needs help. And I started working with Spork. I saw that Jacob is here. I started working with Spork last year, sending produce to them. I just think that with the network of farmers that I have a lot of produce, a variety of produce that is available, and produce that people don't normally find or have in their regions that they work with. And Spork has been a really great, a food hub that supports my food hub and the farmers that I work with by purchasing produce from us every week. uh, and it's been working out great because their food hub is really flexible too. I can drop off, there are Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. I usually go on Fridays though, especially at night, which makes it really easy for me. Um, and even if there's no one there, I can access their facility, drop off by myself or with someone who helps me drop off. And there's a lot of other food hubs that wants to work with me as well right now. But we started the conversation, but we haven't moved forward yet. But I think pretty soon, I will start working with other food hubs as I also trying to get more trucks, refrigerated trucks and trucks, so that way I can do more deliveries. Even though I know that I can do it right now, I think I'm waiting for the okay with the other food hubs. Like when do we want to start? Because I think it was really great to promote the produce that I have. Because most of the farmers that I work with are Asian farmers who grows Asian produce that are so cool. And so yeah, I hopefully I answered the question and describe a little bit about myself. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's great. And we'll get in a little bit to logistics and transportation. So love to hear more about that when we circle back to you. And so Jay, I'll go to you next. Jay at Cape Valley Farm Shop, and ask the same question. Just if you could describe the food hub a little bit, and then what your transacting relationship is with other food hubs around the state.
Hello, Jay from the Farm Shop. Kind of newer to the scene. We work with 40 plus farms and ranches through the Cape Valley. Main customer base is going to be corporate clients. A lot of Pinterest, Twitter, Google, those kind of things. Most of our business is done in the Bay Area of San Francisco. We do try to diversify our accounts towards smaller guys, locally owned restaurants, not only in Sacramento, but all the way down to San Jose. Yeah, we're a harvest to order organization. Our farms, the big ones consist of Full Belly, River Dog, Spread Wing, and a few other bigger ones out there. We try to keep things as local as possible to offer for their customers things they would not be able to get. We aggregate 2 days a week right now, deliver 2 days a week, sometimes 3, depending on the time of the year. And our big focus right now is trying to mend relationships with other food hubs and really create that pipeline while maintaining, customer service to our long vetted customers. Yeah, so I'm here to meet with all of you and see how we can make that work.
Cool. Thanks, Jay. And are you currently selling to other food hubs, or other food hubs that are buying from you?
Yeah, so there's a couple of you here. We sell to at least 3, hopefully more soon.
Great. Thank you. Katya, do you want to talk a little bit about Tahoe Food Hub and your transacting relationships?
Yeah, so I'm Katya. I work at Tahoe Food Hub, and we are also harvest to order. We have a weekly market online, and then we do wholesale retail. We have our little shop, and then we also have like an community outreach program. And our main other food hub kind of network is Cape Valley Farm Shop. We get a lot of stuff from them every week, and we just work with them to help kind of fill what our hyperlocal farmers can't give us at that time. And then also for just really specialty crops that only farms out there are doing. But yeah, mostly to supplement, in the winter when we've got kale and potatoes, they have some other things So it makes it more exciting and offers our customer base a lot more.
Thank you. And Charlie, so your situation is a little bit different. So you're representing the Northwest Food Hub Network. So if you can talk about the network a little bit, how it was formed, and how the relationships between the participating food hubs is structured. It's a
Yeah,
long
absolutely.
question, so let me know if you want me to repeat.
Well, I tend to get long-winded, so I'll try to use few words here, and I'm happy to answer any follow-up questions. Um, yeah, like Alicia said, Charlie Michael, I'm actually the Cooperative Development Center Director at an organization called Mission West. We're a community economic development organization based in rural Western Montana. We work across the Northwest region. And in 2021, we launched the Northwest Food Hub Network. See, the link is there in the chat, so I definitely encourage folks just to click through and quickly get a sense for kind of the range and structure of the network. But we're a network of 3 farmer-owned food hub cooperatives. Link Foods, which is based in Eastern Washington and Spokane, Western Montana Growers Cooperative here in Missoula, and then Puget Sound Food Hub Cooperative out in Western Washington. It's about an hour north of Seattle. So we really launched this project with the developing an inventory trading system as a primary goal. But at the same time, there's number of other ways that we've been collaborating. We work with a common sales broker, a sales representative that does lead cultivation for all 3 of our food hubs in regional markets with a focus on developing institutional markets. Big push for us. We also work with some other sort of shared services contract providers, sort of in a similar fashion to how the National Co-op Grocers Association brings shared services capacity to food grocery co-ops. And then we have a community of practice, of course, and some auxiliary activities like a group gap program and things of that nature. So we're very tight knit. We're just 3 hubs, but we meet typically multiple times a week with different cross sections of staff. And over the past couple of years, we've increased our hub-to-hub trading frequency so that it's happening at least once or twice a week. I can talk a little bit more about how that works, but it's primarily kind of week-to-week coordinated trades to backstop supply, and then more longer, medium-term, high-volume transfers that are really about expanding product availability in a more robust way. So yeah, happy to dive into more detail, but my role for the first couple of years of the project was really full-time dedicated to developing it. And now I juggle it alongside a lot of other things as we've started to take the training wheels off.
Cool. Yeah, thanks everybody for that intro. And as a kind of follow-up question, does anyone have any formal agreements in place with other food hubs when it comes to transacting, or are those mostly informal? Anybody can pipe in.
I don't think ours are formal. I don't manage most of our market. I manage like a small subset of it, but I don't think ours is formal with KPay. I don't know.
We used to have sort of, I guess you'd call them one-off, just single hub to other hub operating agreements. But we recently, just in the past couple months, formalized a network-wide memorandum of understanding, which commits to production standards for our source farms, a margin sharing agreement on the hub-to-hub trades to avoid double markups, local first sourcing commitment. So basically saying that we always source as local as possible, try to exhaust local supply before sourcing from another hub. And then I guess how would you describe it? Sort of I should have had my a food miles reduction. So we take every step that we can to optimize logistical efficiencies sort of along our routes. So we're committed to taking advantage of every backhaul opportunity, intermediate customer that we can serve along the way. And so those are kind of the components that are captured in our MOU.
Thank you. And then to shift a little bit, unless anybody had anything else to add. Okay, go ahead.
I also wanted to say that I don't think we have any formal agreement. But when I think it's when you're working with someone, you actually know what your role is, and then you try to respect one another. So I think that's how we do it.
Okay, and question for anyone who wants to talk about it. How do you manage the transportation of goods across food hubs? So things like, do you own your own truck fleet? Do you use external freight? Do you do cross-docking, anything like that? Charlie, you mentioned backhauling too. Yeah.
I can chime in. So we have two box trucks. We have a 450 and a 550 box truck. And we basically go down to, so I'm in Truckee. We go down to the foothills to Grass Valley and Penryn every week on Wednesdays. And so we meet, a lot of our farmers drop off there, like KP Valley Farm Shop drops off in Penryn. We usually meet them there kind of, but we have like a drop locations, 2 to 3 drop locations depending on the season, of where everyone drops off, and then we come pick it up, and then we do delivery routes. So we mostly use our 450 because we don't need to use a bigger truck if we don't have to. But yeah, we use both in the summer to go down because there's so much volume in the summer. We have one truck that goes to Grass Valley, one truck that goes Penryn, and then in the winter it's just one and does a whole route because it'll all fit. But in the summer it just doesn't fit.
Thanks, Katya. Yeah, okay.
So I've been using I have a cargo van. I've been using my cargo van for like small orders, but if the order is a little bit too much for my small cargo van, then I would get a box truck. And Fresno is hard to, or yeah, I guess in Fresno it's hard to get rent a refrigerator truck. So in order for me to not mess up the supply chain, the temperature, I usually deliver at night, either at night or super early in the morning. And then I only use a semi truck once to deliver a lot of pallets to Spork. So that's how I've been doing it.
And Kang, have you ever considered scaling up or buying a refrigerated truck or anything like that? Or like what would prompt you to make that decision or not?
Yeah, I've been slow on getting a refrigerated truck because I wanted to buy a house first. And also I'm also in the works of trying to buy land. Because I have a goal to build a warehouse in the cold storage. So I've been slow on buying a refrigerator truck because I didn't want to add debt. But I applied to a couple of grants, I think 3 or 4 grants to get some funding to buy refrigerator trucks. So hopefully it works out. And then for if I ever do big orders and I don't deliver myself, I have a lot of connections to different freight companies. So that's how it's been working for me.
So our hubs all have pretty significant fleet capacity that they use for on-farm pickup and then distribution to customers. The challenge for us has just been the distance between our hubs. And so historically, when they were, I guess, initially dabbling in hub-to-hub trading, it was typically third-party freight, but 2 partners in particular. So there's 2 regional produce distributors. I think one of them is grown to be beyond regional now, but it's organically grown company, OGC, and another called Charlie's Produce. And we've, our hubs have typically historically had a pretty good relationship with those folks, even though they are competitors of ours. And they've been willing to make some pallet space available. Typically, 1 to 2 pallet spaces per route as their capacity allows. And so when we've done these backstopping supply style inventory trades, where it's a need that's coming up just 1 or 2 weeks in advance, our hubs are often able to plug in to existing routes. So for instance, between Spokane and Missoula, we have access to a route every day of the week. And so it's quite easy to get, a mixed pallet or two onto one of those routes, move, back and forth as needed. Similarly, going from Spokane out to the Puget Sound area, I would say about 3 or 4 days a week, we have access to a third-party route that we can use. But the big breakthrough for us this last year in particular has really been using our own trucks with our own drivers to do more trading, because what that allows is a full truckload. The challenge though then is making the route profitable, and so the more difficult one there is that long drive across the state of Washington, which usually takes between 6 and 7 hours and can be impacted by inclement weather. And so what we've really done there is it's really been Puget Sound Food Hub, which is the most operationally robust, has the kind of strongest financial base. They really went out on a limb at the start of 2023 and said, well, we're just going to run a biweekly route over to Spokane and back. And we're going to figure out a way to make sure that truck is full both directions. And so what they started doing was really engaging more and more Central Washington customers. There's another food hub in South Central Washington that they kind of linked up with. And that basically allowed them to have, an 8-pallet refrigerated box truck leave the Puget Sound area on a Friday, hit a bunch of customers along the way, on the way out, stay in Spokane overnight, fill up at Link Foods with items from both Eastern Washington and Western Montana that have been brought over on that third-party route between Western Montana and Eastern Washington, and then take all that back to Western Washington with them. And so for the Eastern Washington, Western Montana hub, the big advantage there is that they're able to obtain items that, season extension, really. They, in peak season, they can grow many of the same things, but the Skagit Valley out in the West is so much more temperate that we're really able to really, add many months actually on either side of the season there. And then for the Western Washington Puget, what they're really bringing back are artisan grains, lentils, and things that are really specialties of the Western Montana, Eastern Washington producers. And then this time of year, a lot of stone fruit as well from Eastern Washington. So we're really looking many weeks out for those trades so we can, coordinate with our producers to get pallet-sized quantities of a couple key items, bring them back to the West. And then, those are going to large school districts, Seattle Public, corporate campuses, Microsoft, Gates Foundation. I'm not supposed to mention that, but they buy from us. So yeah, that's really kind of been the strategy lately, and it's been working really well for us.
And Jay, so you mentioned that you primarily serve the Bay Area. So how do you make a decision about doing a delivery to Tahoe Food Hub or a food hub that's outside of your normal delivery area? Like what types of factors do you consider from a cost analysis perspective?
Yeah, we've had minimums in place since before. I've only been here for just under a year, so minimums in place. Being able to dock at the same location every time. Yeah, it's really just about order size and day of the week, I think. Because right now our fleets, we have main refrigerated trucks that we use. We have a third if need be, but that usually just revolves around farm pickups with all the new regulations and laws in place, making it very difficult for us. Yeah, it's usually kind of a same day. So aggregation will happen like on a Wednesday, for example. We'll go pick up at the farms, and then that same day we'll get out to Tahoe Food Hubs. So the next day when we actually do our bulk delivery in the Bay Area, it's kind of just the same direction. So we're not going back and forth. If that answers your question, hopefully.
Yeah, sure. Does anybody else want to talk about the types of factors that you consider when you're making a delivery to another food hub that's maybe outside of your region? Like, do you have minimum for a delivery minimum like Cape Valley Farm Shop or other factors that you're thinking about?
We deliver to, it's not a food hub, but we deliver to the Feather River co-ops. We go to Portola, and then they have one in Quincy as well. So they transport their Quincy order to the Quincy one, because it was pretty much what Jay's saying. Just the bottom line is that they have to have an order minimum. Otherwise, it's just not worth us going out there. But at the same time, them having an order and an order minimum allowed us to make a drop location for retail out there. So yeah, the order minimum is just kind of, that's the biggest kind of constraint that we face with delivering to like bigger orders and like bigger clients. I can't remember the word. And like staff time, and like does it make sense in our route and our weekly schedule. Like that's the other thing, is our weekly schedule is so tight that we really can't afford to just be like, yeah, well, we can drive out there. It has to make sense with our existing schedule.
Yeah, I'd say another thing too is, and this is something I'm working on with my team now. I think they've been doing it a little bit before, but it's also really about, you know, if Tahoe had some stuff we were looking for to put on our list as well, you know, not necessarily just the minimum. Like if I can go pick up stuff to put on our list, that's at a reasonable price, you know, for us to make a margin off of as well. So killing two birds with one stone, I think. And that's kind of from our perspective, especially, you know, going down to like the coast, the Central Coast and stuff. If we want to do that, which I've been, you know, gunning for, is really figuring out how we can just get a little bit of product down there and then bring a little product back to, you know, help out with like the minimum situation.
And then for me, I think I've been telling everyone that I'm pretty flexible. I don't start with the order minimum, just so that way we can actually build that relationship. Yeah, I don't have a minimum order, but it's usually nice. I think everyone is pretty understanding too, so the orders are never too small. However, if the order is small, I have different deliveries, different orders that can cover the delivery costs already. So I try to work. I try to make it work for other buyers to start that relationship.
Yeah, that's great, Kang. You know, on our side, we haven't had to establish order minimums for trading in particular. We do a lot of our producers who transport their items into the hub will have an order minimum when the hub's buying from them, and then for customers, we place order minimums. But we've been really fortunate in that there's just a really high level of trust among our hubs, and we actually I facilitate what we call like a sales working group meeting every Monday, where we have one or two sales managers from every hub. They get together to plan out trades for the week ahead or the weeks ahead potentially. And folks have just been so enthusiastic and so forthcoming with ideas and interest. On the one hand, if they have items that they have too much of, bringing those to the table, or if they have things that they really need, coming prepared and asking for those. And so I've developed sort of the inventory trading spreadsheet. It's a little bit unwieldy, but we're optimistic that in the next year or so, the local food marketplace team, who we work really closely with, is actually going to be able to integrate something like this directly into their platform. But we just use this big spreadsheet to essentially list those items that we need or want. And then the one area where order minimum consideration does come in is for the margin sharing that I see some people were interested in the chat, which is basically the what you would call like the source hub, so the hub that has the item, and then they're selling to the buying hub, the destination hub. The source hub will oftentimes just set, if you buy a whole pallet of this item, we'll reduce our markup. So the typical wholesale markup for our hubs is around that 20 to 25% range. But what we'll typically aim for is something around like a 10% markup on a hub to hub trade. And you're not making much money. You're really just kind of covering operational costs at that point. But the idea is that it becomes a reciprocal benefit that gets paid back to you over time. So that source hub will say, all right, 20% markup on this hub to hub trade, unless you buy a whole pallet, then we'll only do a 10% markup. And they're really expecting and trusting that in a future week, in a future month, that they're going to benefit from accessing an item from another hub that they can then use to keep a foothold in the door with their local markets, to expand their product catalog. So we do really see it as something that's not about the immediate term financial benefit on that trading transaction, but about really growing our overall capacity over time.
Great. Yeah, so much good information in there. And thanks for flagging that question in the chat too, Charlie. So a more general question is, what are the biggest challenges in transacting and building these transacting relationships with other food hubs? Are there any limitations? And how might these limitations be addressed in the real world?
I think number one's just fleet transportation for me. Especially with California changing the regulations on what percentage of our fleet has to be, electric. It's brought up a lot more challenges, and it's relatively new since I joined almost a year ago. Secondarily, it's going to be pricing, and I really like the idea of that trust between Interfood Hub trading, and being able to lower that markup, that margin, in good faith. For me personally, as a businessman, it's hard to trust, but it's hopefully worth it in the end. But it's also what prices we're getting from the farms themselves. As a discussion I literally just had with the president of our company, it's not just about how much we're charging, it's about how much we're paying, right? So I've brought in this perspective for the farm shop of, just like you were saying, Charlie, like, if you buy a pallet, I'm going to get it to you cheaper. It moves the product for the farm. Everybody wins. I can get you a better price. But it's like, yeah, if you want 3 cases of Mizuna, like, I can't really help you. You know what I mean? But if Tahoe or Feed or Mendo Lake or any other food hub wants, to guarantee a sale, it's easier for us to make that work. But that information is, it has to be spread quickly and in a timely manner for us to get that information to the farm. And slowly, since I've implemented this kind of structure of pallet buying, because we don't warehouse anything, right? It's harder for us. We don't warehouse products, so we take the risk away of having product left over and spoilage, but we also take a bigger risk of not being as competitive in the pricing, which is I'm noticing being a common issue with the trading scenario. And it's just, I think the third one for me is just going to be like, consistent communication. As a chef for 20 years, I worked with farms and ranches, and I'd say, hey, I want to put this on my menu, and I want it to be consistent, and I want to always have it, and I want to pay a good price for it. I'll sign a contract with you that says I'll buy 20 cases a week of Mary's free range organic chicken, but I want to make sure I'm getting it at a lower price, and it's a win-win for both the purveyor and the customer. And I think that's what I'd like to see moving forward as a a young, naive person in this field, is just being realistic about that and continuing weekly, if not like every 3 days or so, like this communication of what's needed, because I'm seeing a lot of snap decisions happening that is really just hurting all of us.
Thanks, Jay. Yeah, it's interesting. It makes me think about, like, is there an opportunity to create more of a like structured food hub network, like what Charlie has been working on between food hubs around California? But yeah, Charlie, go ahead.
Yeah, I had I'm not sure where to start, because I think I might get on a soapbox on one of these angles. I'll start with the more operational consideration here that I think is, I mean, this was really new to me when this distinction when I joined this network just a few years ago, because I've never been a food hub operator, and I didn't really think about the tremendous implications of whether you're working from a just-in-time ordering system to an inventory-based one. Inventory, I think that's probably the same terminology that y'all would use, but just buying from the producers before you are sure that you have a destination for the item. And that is, the just-in-time model has always been what our hubs have used. We use the local food marketplace platform. Those orders are getting relayed straight back to a farm that's getting a pick list, delivering to the hub, and then it's going to the customer. To really, in my experience so far, to do inventory trading effectively, you have to be comfortable with holding at least some amount. They have to have, I guess, the physical infrastructure, as Jay was describing, that being a barrier, the physical infrastructure to hold some inventory, and then also, the trust and the confidence in your market channels to be able to move that on the other side. So typically, what we've done is because we have more distance to cover as well. I'm not sure. I know everyone's in different environments, or maybe it's not as far to go. But if we're talking something like going across the state of Washington, and we want to do something like a pallet size transfer of peaches or something, we do our very best to find a destination for as much of those peaches as we can before they go from east to west. But that hub out on the western side of the state, in almost every case, is going to be having some of those peaches coming in without them being spoken for. And so their sales team has to really hustle to get those moved and out the door into a customer upon arrival. And that does sort of dictate, when we think about how fragile is the item, how perishable is it. There are some items right now that we just don't touch. That we don't move raspberry, or we don't move strawberries or raspberries, across the state. It's just they're too delicate, and unless if we could have the entire pallet spoken for, it just doesn't make financial sense. So I think that's one consideration. The other thing that I wanted to just kind of highlight about, I think what's unique about our model, this is going back to what Jay was saying at the beginning of his last segment, it's just that we are 3 farmer-owned cooperatives, and that's been a huge benefit to us because our sales managers, our food hub operators, are really following the lead of their producers. And something that we've really been very intentional with is bringing those producer board members into the fold of these conversations, so that they're very interested and willing in the idea of developing a food hub network, cooperation among cooperatives. And what that's really enabled us to do is just to have more leeway to experiment with what works. And then because these producers another, and because they're increasingly sort of involved in dictating the trajectory of this project, there is a huge amount of patience and trust being built among the hubs about what the nature of these transactions are, and when something goes awry, a really constructive way of kind of workshopping that and figuring out how to make it more financially viable next time.
Katia, go ahead.
I think I remember all the things that I thought about while Charlie was talking, because it reminded me of a few things. But something that with working with like Capay Valley Farm Shop, for example, and we're pre-ordering essentially in order to kind of secure more things that we are really hoping to sell, because not all of it sells. Something that has really helped us with things that don't end up selling, like there's a case of peaches, so something that's super gonna go bad by next week and it's just not gonna go well. We have our like little farm shop that we call our pharmacy. And so that is kind of the outlet for like things that didn't sell that aren't going to last. We can put them out, and then it's kind of more of an immediate, they get sold, and it's not like they had a pre-existing customer. But because we have that shop aspect where people are coming in and shopping a la carte, kind of in like a grocery store-esque setting, it helps us reduce food waste while also continuing to work with like a pre-order situation with another food hub.
Thanks, Katia. I am going to move us on to Q&A, and yeah, thank you all for speaking. I think we could have like a 3-hour panel talking about this topic. So really appreciate it. I don't see Christina. I don't think there's any questions in the Q&A, but it looks like maybe there's one in the chat from Mike at CDFA. Asking Charlie, what is your company's yearly revenue? Is your company making a profit? And if not, what do you need to make that happen?
Well, I work for a third-party nonprofit, so we're not making a profit, I swear. For our 3 food hubs, it's combined, it's about $16 million last year. Not necessarily evenly distributed. Our Western Washington hub has higher annual revenue and is extremely profitable. The other 2 have a bit lower, but they're pretty comfortably profitable. I would say that The biggest reason that they are profitable, because I just, to kind of like change the nature of the second part of the question, I would just say the retail sales are really the anchor. We are increasingly trying to get into the institutional market space, and I think we were a little bit more than 2 million of the 16 million were to institutions last year, but retail is still dominant, and that just tends to be the longer standing, more consistent sales relationships, especially because for us, our first foray into institutions really was in the farm to school space. And that just is a structural challenge with schools being out when we are a very short growing season is firing on all cylinders. So.
Yeah, looks like there's another question in the Q&A from Stacy. Can you talk about the types of software features that are most important for enabling and streamlining the different types of hub-to-hub transactions? And this is for anyone who wants to talk about it. I think some of you use local food marketplace.
Yeah, so we use LFN. One thing that we did, I hope this is like relative, but one thing that we've done in the past year is, I worked hard with my purchasing team and my sales team. My sales guy Jake is here on the call as well, on making a storefront. I don't know if anybody's using that, but the feature, kind of enables the customer to purchase, almost like an Amazon cart, right? So it just makes it to where they can kind of do it on their own and like not feel stressed out, via email or text, phone call. And then the sales team and purchasing team also is allowed to, see things in real time. And it's taken a lot of the hand holding away. Hopefully for the better. I don't know. We're still early on in the experiment, but I think having a storefront that, people are familiar with and know how to use is a lot easier. We were able to set up like reminder emails. I'm pretty sure, hopefully I'm not misspeaking here, but like, making minimum requirements. So if their cart isn't full to where it should be, it gives them a notice. And then, separately having tiered systems. So, the markups on my corporate customers versus my small restaurant or food hub or, grocery clients are different. And it just gives you more accessibility to kind of move things around.
And then I haven't started any software yet because I've been working alone by myself ever since I started, all the way until earlier this year. I hired two staff to help me, but I'm still trying to teach them like, hey, this is how you do things. This is how you do things. So like, I'm not in there yet, but there's so many people who wants me to start doing local food marketplace as well, and hopefully I will have that up sooner than later.
We also use local food marketplace, and not all of our producers have access to see what has sold because we've learned that sometimes causes problems. If they're taking things down and like changing units and they're confused as like, they listed something in a 30-pound case, but we listed it as 2-pound bags. They don't always understand that we're going to break cases up and do things. So select producers for us have access to their pages. But we do use local food marketplace as like a online storefront, and it's pretty nice. There's definitely some features where you're like, this could improve, but overall, for a software for this very niche thing, it is nice.
Yeah, also really bullish on LFM. I think a couple things that have been important for our network. We have 2 hubs where the policy is basically if you don't list it on LFM, we don't sell it. So it's really like a very strict, like as a producer, you have to keep your availability up to date on the timeline that the hub dictates, or else they're just not going to move your items. You're not going to get booted out of membership or anything, but the hub staff basically needs that to drive sales. The other hub has not implemented that policy, and they actually do most of the inventory updating manually, and it is kind of a nightmare. So I really recommend as early as possible, getting producers onboarded, getting them through LFM trainings. Something that I think is unique about our project is that when we got our USDA Regional Food Systems Partnership Grant a few years back to really kickstart this project, and we actually included a contract for LFM to start to develop some more network-oriented components into the platform. Long runway for sure, but some of them are really coming to fruition, and just a few that I think are particularly important in our case are the custom product list, which allows you to sort of tailor which of your available items other customers see. And so we really rely on that for conveying availability between the hubs of what we do and don't want them buying from one another. The next one would be I guess like self-service reporting features that our customers can use. I see there was a question in the chat about kind of the traceability and things like that. And so being able to use the like LFM Connect system to sort of like translate through to the end buyer for their procurement reporting, purchasing, things like that, who all the source producers are is really important. And then the last one is actually a forthcoming feature. Actually, it might have come out in the last release finally. But basically, there's always been a problem where our hubs were kind of like creating a dummy account for one another to do like buying and selling. And now LFM actually has something where using their Connect feature, when one hub wants to buy something from another, it actually sends the pick list back to that other hub's source producer and then sends the purchase order to the source hub. And so it's kind of a small, very idiosyncratic thing, but it basically cuts the administrative burden in half. And so as you all start scaling up, I think you'll start to like scaling up the trading or the frequency, I guess, of trading. That'll start to make a difference, because I know like for us, like a year ago, it wouldn't have been that big of a deal, but now that we're trading multiple times a week, being able to see like quickly like how those documentation flows are happening has become really important. So I would definitely like encourage that for sure. It's a great platform.
Jay, you can go ahead.
Sorry, I'm navigating through this. No, actually, so Charlie, you're able to have your producers update their own availabilities in LFM and tie it into your own storefront. Is that what you're saying? That's super cool. I actually never thought of that.
Yeah, there's kind of that like parallel entry point to the site for producers that they call like LFM Connect. And so once a producer gets set up in there, they can actually plug into as many hubs as they want. And so that's kind of what we're doing now is like if we have a farm, let's say in Eastern Washington, that wants to sell to their local hub, but also wants to be involved in that trading with the other two, they can join all three hubs as like an LFM producer. And from their side, they can actually say, I want these items to be available through my local hub. I want these to be available through the inventory trading scheme region wide. And so it becomes like a really nimble way to kind of slot them in. And then, like I said, once an order gets placed for one of their items from one of the other hubs, it doesn't have to like go to the source hub and then get recreated and go back out to the producer. It just flows simultaneously. And it's just been such a time-saving thing for us. So yeah.
No, that's awesome, because I've actually been covering our purchasing manager for the last week and like trying to do all that stuff. She's like been doing it for years, and trying to like navigate through all that it's very time consuming when you're getting a spreadsheet of like what the farm has available, and then you have to like go through every little detail and make sure it's all accurate. So it's great news. Thanks.
I'm gonna take one more question. I know you all have more questions. And as a reminder, we are sharing folks' contact information, and we're also gonna do breakout rooms after this. So if you're interested in following up with anyone, we'll definitely do that after the workshop or while you're here. So I'm gonna ask from the anonymous. Thanks for your shares. Could you share more about your food safety and traceability policies, / if you have ever had concerns about that with food hubs, as well as in general relationships with farmers? Have you ever had concerns about food hub relationships with farmers? Okay, lots of questions there. Yeah, maybe we can start with like food safety and traceability policies, especially working with other food hubs.
We haven't had any like red flags or issues that I've been aware of with food safety and hub to hub transactions. If we also, I feel like when you have that relationship with another food hub, you can just ask. And for the most part, we've never really had anything that we were alarmed with or confused about.
So our hubs have all historically required that their producers provide a food safety plan and a traceability plan accompanying that upon joining the hub. Enforcement of that follow through has been a little bit lax, but we really saw it as an important need to have some kind of standard across the network. And so about a year and a half ago, we really started doing a lot more meaningful outreach. My organization, just being a nonprofit that works in the food system, has a long background in food safety. And so we were able to work, we work close with National Farmers Union actually under a FTA cooperative agreement that's oriented around food safety, and just to train up some folks to do TA and really deploy them out to help get those food safety plans in order. So one of our production standards now for anyone involved in hub-to-hub trading is that they need to make a food safety plan and a traceability policy available to all 3 hubs in the network. And then we just kind of have that in a common location for access. Fortunately, we haven't had very many buyers saying that they need farm level GAP certification, good agricultural practices, but they have tended to always ask that our hubs have that. Particularly the larger retailers and institutions. And so each of our food hubs has like warehouse level harmonized GAP certification. And then part of their food safety plan refers to having the farm level plans. But while we have a number of farms that have chosen to get GAP certified, that's definitely not something that's true across the board.
Okay, I'm gonna wrap things up really abruptly. Thank you so much to everybody on the panel and for the great questions from attendees.